Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the January Nurse User Group meeting. We'll get started in just a few minutes. Give some people a little more time to get here.
Thanks, Rebecca. Looks like we've got a pretty good turnout.
Yeah, we do. I'm pretty excited. I think if you say the word Perlmutter, you get more people.
Yep, everybody's very interested to know. That said, before we start on Perlmutter, we'll run through our regular agenda.
Okay. Sounds good. I just wanted to have something up that.
Yeah, that looks good. Thank you.
I'll stop sharing.
All right, I'll switch across and start sharing and then pass back to you when we get to that. Here we go. Okay, hopefully everybody can see the title slide at the moment. So it's 2 minutes past. We might give people about 1 more minute. And then we'll start. So the meeting is being recorded. We'll post the video of it via YouTube, but on the meeting webpage soon after the meeting. New and special for today, thanks Rebecca for working out how to do this, is we're actually live streaming on YouTube as well. So as well as having Zoom, we have YouTube. I suspect we've got a pretty good quorum now. People might still gradually arrive, but let's get started. So a quick overview of the plan. Those who have been coming to these meetings are a little bit familiar with it, but I think we've got a few people at least who perhaps haven't as yet. The format of these meetings is intended to be quite interactive. We have a very large group at the moment, so there might be a few jumps and starts while speaking. Feel free to speak up though if it does get unmanageably complex. We'll perhaps use the chat to sort of order parts of the conversation. Also, if you are not already on NERSC user Slack, I think we included it. Here we go. I have a link to it here. I'll post it in the chat. It's really good to join. It's a great forum for having discussions during this meeting and also after the meeting. It has the nice little advantage of it keeps the conversation, so the conversation doesn't just disappear when the Zoom meeting closes. Let's put the link in the chat here. So, and if you are already, or when you are already on the NERSC user Slack, we have a channel called #webinars, which is a good one, which is what we'll have the discussion in. So our regular agenda for these meetings is we start out with a win of the month, followed by a Today I Learned section. We'll explain those as they come up. A period for announcements or calls for participation. So this is not only announcements from NERSC, there's also an opportunity for you, our users, to announce things that NERSC users might be interested in. So conferences that you're involved in, for instance. Then our topic of the day, which today will be Perlmutter, and then we'll finish up. So we'll have about 15 minutes or so to talk about Perlmutter, see what's coming up there. And then we'll talk quickly about what's coming up and a brief look at last month's numbers. So our first section is Win of the Month. The idea of this is an opportunity to show off an achievement or highlight somebody else's achievement that you know about. This doesn't have to be, a Nobel Prize. We're kind of about celebrating the small wins and learning from it as well. Things that we've achieved. That will be interesting to other NERSC users. Things like if you've had a paper accepted, it could be that you've been working away at a challenging bug and worked it out and solved it. You might have managed a significant scientific achievement, which is kind of a good way to get yourself onto the radar for a science highlight or a high impact scientific achievement award, which are things that NERSC awards each year. We're also interested in hearing about innovative uses of high performance computing. That's another HPC Achievement Award from NERSC. So I'll open the floor. Please just speak up. What did you do that was interesting, and what was the key insight?
Everybody seems shy today.
Yeah, nervous to be the first to speak. If you're not sure about speaking, or you're in a position where it's not easy to speak, also feel free to write something in the chat or on the webinars channel of the Slack.
So I'll break the ice, Steve. So we managed to do the allocation year rollover without any major damage or anything. It went really well, actually. So I think that's a pretty good accomplishment for NERSC.
Yeah, and that one is one that a lot of people made contributions to make sure that went smoothly. It may have been, I guess, a quiet month for a lot of people as well because of the winter break.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Lippy.
Yes, this is Lippy. I'm currently a graduate student at the University of Chicago. I'm just about to finish up and graduate, but this month I accepted a NESAP postdoc at NERSC. So I will be joining NERSC as a postdoc once I graduate, and I'm very, very, very excited.
That is great to hear. So that's actually 2 wins, because congratulations on graduating as well. And yeah, it'd be great to see you here. Do you? Yeah, can you say anything yet about the project that you'll be working on?
I don't know yet. I'm still talking to lots of people, and I'm, we'll see. I still have a couple months to go before I defend and actually start. So, but I accepted the position like a couple weeks ago, so I'm still pretty excited.
Yeah, congratulations and good luck for the defense.
Thank you.
NESAP does I'm sure a lot of people here are involved already. A lot of really interesting projects, bringing applications up to being ready for next generation systems. And we're almost always looking for new postdocs to join the effort. So, spread the word around candidates that you know. So if people are nervous to talk about achievements, hang on, we have a comment here just before moving on. So the LSST desk project now has a new data portal that uses Spin based on Globus Modern Research Data Portal. So if you look in the chat, Heather's posted a couple of links to that. So yeah, I gather that sounds like it was a reasonably big project to implement, and you've had some success doing it. It's great to hear. So the other side of the win of the month coin is the today I learned. This is almost that's not quite the lose of the month. But part of the aim here is to recognize that when things are difficult and don't work, that's actually not necessarily a bad thing, because we can learn a lot from it, and taking several shots to actually succeed in something is normal and expected. And not only is it kind of what research is about, tracking down things even if they don't turn out to be the ultimate solution. There's always something to learn, and I think as a group we can actually benefit a lot from learning, not only from the difficulties that we hit ourselves, but also from the difficulties that each other hit, and possibly even better, how we got around it. It can also be an opportunity for, if you've hit a difficulty, somebody else might have hit that in the past and be able to give a tip as to where to go next. This also helps us as NERSC to identify things that maybe we can improve our documentation on, or find ways to make a little bit easier. And of course, it doesn't have to be things that you got stuck on either. It can be something interesting that you learned that might benefit NERSC users. So, for instance, you might have attended a conference and seen a presentation about the E4S exascale computing software stack that has some great tips in it. That was one of the announcements. There's a new version of that out at NERSC now. That was in the weekly email this week. Anybody like to volunteer with something that they learned, for better or worse, or would like to learn? Lots of contemplation here.
Hi, this is Patrick. I'm just starting to wade into the waters of NERSC, and I had looked into this before, but only in the last week found these new user tutorials that were recorded, these videos that were recorded in June of last year,
yes.
and they are phenomenal. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for saving those.
It's it's good to hear that that's proving helpful to people. Recording the tutorials is a relatively recent addition to NERSC's training, and we're very interested also in feedback and ideas for other things that you'd like to see training on. But yeah, that's a good tip. I think we can probably put in the notes for afterwards a link to where those tutorials are for other people listening. So I see Cori has posted a link in the chat to the MyNERSC queue wait times as a helpful tip for seeing queue status. And I expect that that's was especially valuable to people in December, when the competition for time on the system can get quite high. Everybody's trying to get things finished before the allocation year ends.
In regards to that, I have actually a question. How on the website you also have an estimated start time, I believe, for jobs that are in the queue.
I think
How reliable?
SQS shows that, correct?
I'm looking at the current queue under jobs, Cori queues. You can see estimated start
Yes.
time. How reliable is that? Because I was very surprised that a job, nearly a full machine job that I hoped would run before in last year's allocation, at some point it showed an estimated start time January 20, 2022.
So,
So,
so Peter, I think I probably know what happened with there. So, so those start times are a function of what Slurm is telling it, and my guess is what happened there is we had a reservation for the allocation year, and they made the reservation just arbitrarily long, so probably a year long.
Got it.
So that's why your job was going to start in a year.
Yep, thanks. And in general, how reliable are those start times? Do you know? Has anybody ever looked at that?
You know, I would not put a whole lot of faith in it. I would take it with a grain of salt.
I have been, yes.
Yeah, because so many things can happen between now and when your job would start.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I would say if your job is starting to show up as actually having a start time, that's a really good sign that your job is one of the top jobs and should start soon for certain values of soon.
I've often seen that it fluctuates between eligible to start in 0.1 hours and having a start time estimated.
Yeah, so so basically what Slurm does is it will create a schedule for the next 96 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And it does that. It goes down the list of all of the eligible jobs based on their priority level, and it does that like every 5 minutes or so. So yeah, so that so sometimes the schedule might be different depending on how it can fit jobs in there, basically.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
I have a question. I am a relatively infrequent user of Cori, but I'm a PhD student at Rutgers University working on systems. So I had a question from all the people who use supercomputers in general. And it is a high level question, but let's see if somebody has a high level answer to it. So the question is, let's say you have a workload, right? And you're trying to allocate nodes to it using Slurm or whatever resource manager you use, right? And when you use Slurm, you need to give how many cores you want to allocate, how many nodes do you want to allocate, and how much memory do you want to allocate. So what heuristic does the PI or the researcher uses to allocate memory while running their systems or while running their workloads?
So at NERSC, for most of the queues, you actually request in blocks of a node. And so you actually get all of the memory on the node, which for Cori is 128 gigabytes for the Haswell nodes and 96 gigabytes for the KNL nodes, minus a little bit that the operating system uses. Where you do have to allocate memory is when you're using the shared queue.
Right.
But so the default there is to split the amount of memory according to the number of CPUs. So, you know, if it's, I think if I recall correctly, the shared nodes are Haswell nodes, so they have 128 gig and 32 cores. So if you need 16 cores, you know, you're kind of aiming at about 60 gigabytes, but you might need a different amount, and that really depends on the application that you're using. And the only reliable way to find that out is, you know, to do some tests, maybe in a CELIC interactive session, to get a bit of a sense of how much memory the application actually needs.
Right. A lot of times what happens is when you're doing a lot of IO, you'll probably use a lot of memory that way as well. And this is in addition to what the application allocates for itself. And so it might not be very useful to run a smaller test on interactive mode and see how much memory is used. But yeah, that is probably a good heuristic to start with at least.
There will certainly be some extrapolation.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
No
I
worries.
share my the difficulty in the last month. It's actually probably shared by many users, just about getting the queue at the allocation year. By the way, this is Koichi from PNL.
Hi, Koichi.
Yeah. So in my case, I've been using Cori KNL. Usually that is less crowded than Haswell, but actually interesting, that's not the case in the last few weeks. Actually, KNL is more is busier than Haswell, so that's one thing I noted. And for me, it has two difficulties. One is the the premium queue competition that Rebecca and the other people has mentioned last time, and then so it's gonna be hopefully changed in the coming this allocation year. But in my case, the NUG repo I've been using was also run out twice. So I get run out in the near the end of December once, but we got recharged, and then run out again. We got recharged. So I was wondering, in general, if that happens, should we cancel and resubmit the same job again, or it should automatically get its queue, whatever the status of repo changing negative to positive balance? I got some advice in offline from Slack channel. It might be better to cancel and resubmit, but my job in the end didn't get the queue. So these two jobs, one is using 800 nodes, the other using 400 nodes. Originally I submitted in December 23rd, but in the end I couldn't get it to run in the last allocation year. And particularly 400 node job, probably the most popular job category in night landing. From 200 to 500 seems to be the most popular according to the queue wait time. So one thing I might do is to maybe avoid that kind of node. But if you have any other recommendations, and then also this, the negative positive balance in the repo, does it really affect queue waiting? I'd like to hear, about those. Thank you.
So your repo balance generally doesn't affect the amount of time that you wait in the queue, with the exception of if your repo has run out of balance, then you have the option of running in the overrun queue. But when you submit to the overrun queue, the job has a much lower priority, so it starts much further back in the queue. Other than that, everything is equal.
Okay.
Or apart, I guess, from premium jobs, which again is you can explicitly spend more of your repo on premium. And this year we've implemented some new limitations on using premium, because it is intended to be a way to for kind of emergency cases, meeting a deadline, rather than just being ahead in the queue in the normal sense of things. Probably our biggest tip for getting through the queue faster is to make the job short if possible. It's easier for Slurm to schedule even a lot of nodes if the job doesn't run too long. Whereas a job that runs for 24 or 48 hours, Slurm needs to find a gap that's big enough, or either needs to find a gap that's big enough to run for that long, and those gaps are very, very rare, or you need to wait until your job has been in the queue for long enough that it's very close to the front, and so it gets scheduled first. So checkpointing can be a good way of breaking your job into smaller chunks.
Okay, cool. Have you guys, thanks for the advice. Have you guys tried near the end of the year increase cost of the priority premier queue even more, like 4 times or even 5 times more expensive than the regular queue?
So in past years, we've simply disabled premium.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. What we hope this year is that by making it making premium not something that just anyone can get, that the PI has to approve it,
Mm.
and also that your cost will go up after a certain point. We're hoping that will help this year, but we'll find out how it works.
Okay, great. Thanks.
So I see there's a few more bits of advice and some questions in the chat. So yeah, take a look at the Zoom chat. We'll also capture these near the end of the meeting to save it, to take notes on it. It sounds like a good upcoming topic might be a deep dive into Slurm and how to make the most of Slurm. So we might take note of that for a future meeting. It's perhaps time to move on to our next topic. Thanks to everybody who shared something that they've learned and asked questions, and hopefully everybody had some learning experience or inspiration for something from that. Announcements and calls for participation. So we do have one that I know of in a moment. You should have all received a weekly email every week. There are announcements in that, so be sure to check that. I think the big one for this week is that the new allocation year starts today. So particularly if you're a PI, you want to make sure that your project is kind of configured as you like. You've included the project members to continue that you need, and that you've selected who should use premium. And you'll generally be prepared for the new year. Johannes, do you want to speak about the new appointment type that we now have?
Sure. Yeah, thanks. So this is really targeting anyone who might be new to NERSC, or maybe they know someone who's going to be new to NERSC. For example, if you have postdocs or PhD students joining your group regularly, it's good to remind everyone that this new NERSC 101 appointment type is really there to help people get started and ask maybe just questions because they're new to NERSC, but also maybe you have questions that you were just too afraid to ask. And so if you go to nersc.as.me, then you'll see the screen on the right there, and you can see now we have a bunch of appointment types to choose from. Yeah, thank you very much.
That looks good. Can you post that link in the chat? I think it will be useful for people.
Sure. You mean so it's clickable?
Yeah.
Will do.
I think we already spoke a little about the AY transition. Does anybody else have any announcements that they would like for other NERSC users and NERSC to hear about? Conferences
Not
or
an
presentations?
announcement, but I have a question that may be useful for others too. What is the pullback policy for 2021 allocation year?
Okay, great question. So we will have allocation reductions, I guess, if users have not used their allocations. Richard, I see, is here. Richard, can you tell us what the schedule is? I believe we're going to do it only twice instead of 3 times this year.
Hi, yes, Rebecca. So we're going to do it twice this year, and I've forgotten the dates right now. I believe it was sometime in May and sometime in September or October. And the idea will be to return time that's not being used to the program managers, so they can service requests from people that need more time. in their office or their program. And the exact percentages, I don't recall, but for instance, if it's October and you've only used 10% of your time or some number that we will publish, then a certain amount of your time will be taken away, given back to the program manager. And if that project needs it back, then they can go to the program manager to discuss it. We will send out email announcements, and people can ask for exceptions. And if you have a need to be able to use all your time late in the year, for example, maybe it's associated with some experiment or some mission or something like that, then you can say, you can let us know, and then we will exempt you from these automatic rollbacks.
Thanks.
Thanks, Richard. So the context here, in case people weren't aware of it, is that predicting the future is really difficult. And we understand that a project may have requested more time than turn out for it to need in a given year, and another project may have requested less time than it turns out to need. And these allocation reductions or redistributions during the year sort of give an opportunity to account for those I guess unexpected circumstances.
So is that all documented at this point?
I don't think it's documented yet, but when it is, I'll definitely announce it in the weekly email.
Thank you.
I have a quick question about related to that.
Yep.
The PI and co-PIs used to have the capability within NIM to transfer time to another project, and we used to do that all the time at the end of the year when colleagues would need time that we had in surplus and vice versa. We can't do that anymore in Iris. It would be nice if that could be restored or added to Iris.
So this sounds like Stefan.
Yep,
Stefan.
that's me.
So I can tell you the thinking behind this, from at least from my viewpoint, is that when you write an ERCAT proposal to the program managers, you lay out a research plan connected to, in most cases, research fund grant that is funding certain research, and the program managers make a decision based on those proposals. And then if individual people can transfer this time around amongst themselves or amongst their different projects, which I think they still can do, that it is not with the approval of the program managers that gave out the time. So I guess I'm drawing some sort of analogy of the time has value, and analogy with the actual research funding itself, for instance. So you would not be able to say, transfer money from your grant to some other researcher that needed it. And that's the thinking behind that. We can have a further discussion about this, but it kind of goes around the intent of the program manager who gave out the time. That's my thinking anyway.
Okay, I can see your point. It usually happens only at the end of the year, and within, in my case, within the PPL PIs, they would all ask each other if they had some time to spare. But I understand that you could do that during the year as well. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks. So I think we've announced this one a couple of times. Hopefully people are aware now that there are some changes to the premium QoS charging. Essentially, so projects that can use premium at a 2 times charge factor up until 20% of your allocation, and then the charge increases. So the aim of this is to help limit premium to use for scientific emergency. Okay, we have a little about the transition project progress, and I think some of these slides may have been inadvertently left in from last month, so we'll skip through them. So now we're up to, I think, the big thing that people are very interested in, which is what's happening with Perlmutter. And we have a little bit of an overview that, and yeah, Rebecca, would you like to take over the screen and walk us through what users can expect?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Steve. Okay. So I'm hoping you can see this in a full screen in just a second here. Okay. Let me know if you can't
It's
see
looking
that.
good.
All right. Wonderful. Okay. So we're going to talk about Perlmutter. The number one question I know everyone has on their mind is, when will I be able to get on Perlmutter? So we'll talk about that and what kind of stages we have to go through. We're also going to kind of review what Perlmutter is going to be like, the architecture and the environment, and then have some discussion about how you can prepare for Perlmutter. Okay, so Perlmutter is going to be a really exciting system. So it's a HPE Cray Shasta system. It's going to be the largest Shasta system in existence at the time that it gets deployed. It has the HPE Slingshot interconnect. So again, this is also the first large system with the Slingshot interconnect. This is a high performance, scalable, low latency, Ethernet compatible interconnect. It'll have a 35 petabyte all flash Lustre Scratch file system. And it's really our first machine that's designed to meet the needs of both large-scale simulations and data analysis from experimental facilities. It will have about 3 to 4 times the compute capabilities of Cori. So anyway, we're really excited about it. What does all of this mean for you, though? There's going to be really a lot of new and unique features that I think you're going to like. But because everything is so new and under the current circumstances that we're all facing, the timelines here are kind of an estimate because things could change. So when will you be able to use this fantastic machine? So in 2021, the machine is going to be considered a pre-production system. So we will not charge for compute time in 2021. Perlmutter itself is arriving in 2 phases over the next 12 months. So the first phase has all of the GPU cabinets, and those GPU cabinets are actually arriving at the beginning of next month. There's some other stuff that has already arrived, but the GPU cabinets themselves will arrive next month. And our NESAP teams will get access to it in approximately the second quarter of 2021. Then users will be added in stages as the system matures. We don't want everybody on all at once and running into lots of problems. So we want the system to be mature before we get everyone on. But we'll provide more details as the time nears, as we know more. Then in 2022, Perlmutter will become a production system and we'll start charging again for Perlmutter. And one new thing is that the GPU and CPU charges will be allocated separately. So usually, you just have some NERSC bucks and you can spend them however you want. But in this case, we're going to have separate pools for CPU and GPU usage. Okay, so here's kind of our timeline about what's going on here. So this orange line represents like we are here. So there's still quite a few things that we need to do. So we've got to install the machine, the phase 1. Then we'll accept it and we'll let our NESAP folks on. And then then, we're going to gradually add people. We're going to update our CPUs to the more advanced, better CPUs. And then we're going to have a delivery of phase 2, and we're going to have to take it down for a while and integrate phase 1 and phase 2. And then hopefully in the final quarter, we'll have the machine all together. It'll be running, everyone will be on, running great, and nobody will be charged. And then 2022, it's a production resource and charging will begin. Okay, so some differences between Perlmutter and Cori. So the slingshot network is a pretty cool thing. So it allows Perlmutter to be less complex than Cori because it just has one network for everything. So you can kind of see the difference here. This is kind of everything within one network, whereas on Cori, there were a couple of different networks. So Scratch is on the same network. Unlike in the case of Cori, you can see Scratch is kind of on a different network. So that'll result in a smaller distance between compute and storage. And I think that'll benefit users a lot. So this also means, though, that the Scratch on Perlmutter is internal to Perlmutter, while Cori's Scratch can be accessed from other machines. So they're both using this Dragonfly topology. So that's one thing that's the same. But obviously it's different in the way that it's implemented. And then finally, Perlmutter is going to use containerization for better orchestration of services. So when you log in, you're going to log into a containerized service that is provisioned using Kubernetes. So I guess I gave that away here. So the non-compute services are deployed as containers using Kubernetes for orchestration. So here's kind of what's going to happen. So we know that the slingshot network is super cool. It's better than Aries. It's faster, has better traffic control, and it's Ethernet compatible. In our phase 1, we're going to get non-compute nodes, which we've already received. They're already there at NERSC. The first 20 login nodes and all of the service nodes. We received the storage system, which is also already there. And then finally, we're just waiting on these approximately 1,500 GPU compute nodes. And the nodes have 4 NVIDIA A100 GPUs in each node. So then phase 2, we're going to get 4 large memory nodes, 20 more login nodes, and about 3,000 CPU compute nodes that have the AMD 64-core CPU. Now, what's Perlmutter going to be like when you get on it? Well, it's going to be very similar to Cori. I mean, despite the fact that we've got this, Kubernetes orchestration container, sounds really fancy and scary, it's just going to look the same to a user. So you access it using SSH. You're going to have the same home and CFS file systems are mounted to it. We're going to follow the same sort of Scratch usage model where you have quotas, where it gets purged. It's going to be pretty much the same. Jupyter will be available for Perlmutter, and it's going to be pretty familiar compilers and programming environments. So it's going to have modules just like you've seen before. There may be a few minor differences, but the basic idea is there. So the programming environments themselves are going to be a little different. You may notice there's no programming environment Intel because we're going to have AMD processors, but there's going to be 4 different programming environments available, and I think the best ones for most users, especially users of GPUs, is going to be the PGI and the GNU. But LLVM is also going to be pretty good. The CCE environment is really not going to be useful for anyone who wants to use the GPUs. But if you're on the CPU side, then using the Cray computing environment will actually be pretty good. So how do you prepare for Perlmutter? So first thing is read about it. So we've got some documentation up about Perlmutter readiness. It's under the performance area in the NERSC documentation. And this link, of course, is direct to it. And then get some help. So we've got our NERSC 101 office hours appointments that you're more than welcome to get an appointment with us and talk to us about Perlmutter, about preparing. And then we also have some GPU nodes on Cori. We don't have very many, so you have to share with others, but you can request access to these GPU development nodes if you have a genuine need for developing your code on NERSC GPUs. So those are the 3 ways that you can get prepared. So I saw that there were some comments, so I'll see if there's any questions there. And also if anybody has any other questions, I'm happy to answer them. Okay, so I saw one question about NERSC 101 appointments. Can we make an appointment for a group of people? Absolutely, but you'll just need to coordinate with that group to figure out a good time for your appointment. How much faster is the A100 GPUs compared to the ones installed in Cori GPU right now, the V100s?
So somebody from our application performance group who's on might have a ready answer for that question. It's something that we're certainly tracking via NESAT, but I have to admit I'm not completely up to date with what the numbers we're seeing are.
So if I remember correctly, I think the average speed up was about 1.6, but I don't have the newest data.
Yeah, okay, that sounds right to me. Okay, another question is, will no machine work the same? Yes, there shouldn't be any difference there. How much memory per node for the CPU nodes?
I believe that was 512 gig.
Yes,
if I recall correctly. That is actually, so we'll post these slides on the web page for the meeting sort of shortly after the meeting ends, and the diagram that has that information is on the slides.
All right, yeah. Okay, will shifter be used for containers or something else? So I think for containers running on the machine, yes, it'll be shifter. For the container of your login node, I don't know, actually. I don't have any idea. Will Perlmutter nodes have outbound connectivity to WAN?
I think the fine details of networking might still be being worked out, but I think there is sort of plans for somebody in that. We might have to get back to you on that one.
Yeah, I don't think we know. What is the per node network bandwidth? I think we also don't know that.
Yeah, I think that one hasn't been announced as yet.
So it is Richard. Let me answer Doug's question. We'd like to hear about your specific use case for the outbound connectivity, because a lot of things are possible and the final configuration may not be quite set. So we are interested in learning about what your needs are. So if you could send us an email to say consult@nurse.gov describing your use case, that would be great.
Okay.
Actually,
are
yeah, that's a good general point too.
Yes, excellent point. Thank you. Yeah, if you have a specific use case that you're afraid might not be covered, please just send in a ticket and ask us about it. Are there some nodes with both GPUs and CPUs? Yes, so the GPU nodes actually have CPUs in them as well. It's just more interesting to talk about the GPUs, I guess. But it's going to be the same CPUs throughout the whole machine.
The main difference is the number of them. So the CPU only nodes have no GPUs, obviously, but twice as many CPU cores, while the GPU nodes have 4 GPUs each.
Okay, will Cori eventually be phased out? Yes. Yes, we will run Cori definitely through 2022, but I don't know beyond that. We may have to take Cori out to make room for the next machine. We don't know. Okay. Can you confirm that we will be able to co-schedule GPU and CPU nodes on Perlmutter? Yes, I believe you should be able to do that because it will just be one Slurm instance covering the whole machine. So it would be like today, in theory, I don't know that anybody ever does this, but in theory, you could schedule a job that would go on both the Haswell nodes and the KNL nodes of Cori.
Is that indeed possible? Because I thought you either submit to KNL queue or to the Haswell queue.
Okay, so yes, it is possible. It would have to be done through a reservation, and like right now, the way that the QoSs are set up, they are all like the way that currently the QoSs are set up. None of them bridge both the KNL and the Haswell nodes. But we could, in theory, create one, and then you would be able to schedule a job that would go across both types of nodes.
And that same model may be possible for Perlmutter too.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Is Cori going to be gone soon after Perlmutter becomes available? No, no, not soon after, but it will a few years down the road. Will Perlmutter Scratch be attached to Globus DTN notes?
That's a good question. We might have to come back to you on
No,
that.
okay, so it won't be, Perlmutter Scratch won't be mounted to the DTN nodes. However, we will have a Globus endpoint for Perlmutter that you can use to move data in and out of Perlmutter Scratch.
Perfect, thank you, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa.
All right, will our map be provided? Very nice profiling tool. It is a very nice profiling tool. Yes, I think we plan on doing that. Will NERSC support Singularity? I do not know of any plans for supporting Singularity. Will the application runs on compute nodes involve containers or just bare metal? I think by default they will just basically be bare metal, but of course you could always run in a container. Wow. Okay, we're getting a lot of really great questions here.
Getting
And
quite detailed.
Stefan has his hand up too, so maybe we'll take a break from the comment questions and go to Stefan.
Hi. You mentioned that the Cray environment wouldn't support OpenACC. Is that right, or you're just discouraging?
No, it really won't. It really won't. They're not doing any further development.
But I mean, right now the Cray compiler supports OpenACC 2.0, right?
Yep.
Yeah, 2.0 only.
But that's not going to be available, or if you don't use any fancier OpenACC statements, you could still use it.
I assume so.
Okay.
I'm not
It does support OpenMP5, some 5.0 features already.
So Stefan, are you
With,
specifically
11.
So Stefan, are you specifically asking about the Cray programming environment as opposed to the programming environment on the Cray. I think that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. The Cray programming environment, like the Cray compilers.
The CCE compiler.
The
Yeah,
CCE compiler, yeah.
Yeah.
The CCE compiler starting from version 9 uses LLVM backend, so it's more similar to whatever LLVM can support. It for the OpenMP part, it does support OpenMP5 and offload feature as well. Especially starting 11, CCE 11 has a more significant improvement over the CCE 10. The Fortran part is still using the Cray classic Cray compiler for the Fortran support.
Oh, I see. They're not going to be moving to LLVM?
I think eventually it's going to, but LLVM Fortran is also not mature yet.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Stefan. That's a good question. Okay. What MPI libraries will be available? What network?
We did have a list of those. And
yeah. I don't know that I have any information on that beyond just it's going to be the Cray MPitch based MPI, right? I
assume we will also have OpenMPI.
Yeah, we probably will provide, but like the thing that would be the best supported is going to be the Cray.
Yeah, but comes with the system is the Cray MPitch.
Yeah,
based on
we're
MPI.
always interested in learning why you need a specific MPI. So if you need OpenMPI, you have a specific need for a specific version. Again, we'd like to know. There are various initiatives in the, for instance, the Exascale Computing Project, looking at different flavors of MPI, and we may be able to leverage that work on Perlmutter, but we need use cases, and we need to see demand that people need it and would want it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks. Okay, does NERSC have a list of Perlmutter ready or in progress NERSC supported codes and their current status?
Other than NESAP?
Right, so we've got these NESAP codes that we've been working with them and supporting, but are you talking about more like, if you're talking about more like applications, such as, for example, we always provide certain computational chemistry apps. We definitely plan to continue to provide a lot of those things. And we will publish a list. We're not there yet, but we will publish a list of what software that we plan to provide and support in accordance with our new software support model. Okay. Will Shifter be used for user-provided containers? Yes, I believe that it will be. Are there plans to allow the Shifter repository to connect to other repositories beyond Docker Hub? I don't.
Not that I know of.
Can I?
Yes.
Can I? So we currently do have a private internal Shifter registry that we can upload images to that. If you have a specific use case that's not covered by that, then please let us know, and we'll work with you. Our goal with the container providing is to eventually get to the full functionality that we have now on Cori, and maybe even more on Perlmutter with whatever tools we offer.
Yeah.
Right, thank you.
So it has occurred to me that we've actually reached the official end of the meeting time. There's obviously still quite a lot of interest in discussion. But what we might do is pause, flick very quickly through the last couple of agenda items, and we can perhaps stay on for a short amount of time for kind of open discussion after that. That's quite optional.
Sounds good.
So, here we go. So our last couple of items are coming up. We won't go too deeply into these, but we are always very interested in topic requests or suggestions, and especially we'd love to hear from some of our users during the topic of the day section. So if you'd like to talk about the work that you're doing at NERSC or using NERSC facilities for, yeah, I think that would be a really interesting topic for other users to hear. So, a relatively, what do you call it? A relatively light lift in that it's only a 10 to 15 minute section. So it's more like a lightning talk than a conference talk. But yeah, if you're interested in talking about that, please let us know. Either a direct message on the NERSC Slack channel or a comment in the webinars NERSC user Slack channel, or send us a ticket at help.nersc.gov with a request or a self-nomination. Finally, last month's numbers. So the scheduled availability was quite high. The overall availability was somewhat lower. And this is because, as you'll probably remember, we had a multi-day, about a 4-day, I think, outage while we upgraded the power at NERSC's facility in preparation for Perlmutter. Looked at on a chart, you can see sort of there's a few red marks for unscheduled outages and the big black mark, which was the scheduled power work while Cori was unavailable for that. We had a relatively high number of unscheduled incidents, totaling a little over 11 hours. Most of them were very short, sort of a few minutes to an hour, and thus are not very visible in the chart, just a function of scale. Cori's utilization in December was up over 95%, so that was great to see. And it's also great to see that Cori is being used for jobs that are at a scale that just can't be done in most other places. So 55.2% of Cori's workload fell under the category of large jobs, more than 1,024 KNL nodes. We had 427 new tickets, 460 closed tickets. So there's a typo on that. That should say 1st of January. So the current, or as of a couple of weeks ago, backlog of tickets is a little under 500. So that's all of the official parts of the meeting agenda. We'll stay on for a few more minutes for further discussion, because it's clear that people are quite interested to talk more about Perlmutter, but feel free to leave at any time. So a reminder again, the meeting's being recorded. We'll post the recording, also the slides and some notes about the meeting on the website, sort of shortly after it finishes. Thanks everybody for participating, and especially thanks Rebecca and some of the other NERSC people who presented bits and answered some questions. And thank you everybody also for asking questions and for sharing your experiences in the various parts of the meeting. So it does look like the speed of questions coming through in the chat is slowing down. William's comment, I think, is very valid. The documentation needs a sed command. We're going to need to update things due to name changes. So that will gradually happen over the near term. So I'm going to save the chat so that we have a record of it to use later. And I see people are dropping off fairly quickly. Does anybody have any final questions or comments that they'd like to make before we close the meeting? Okay. Thank you all, and we'll see you at the next one.
Thank you.